Today we're building a DIY carry-along stool. It folds up into itself and you can carry it with a shoulder strap. So this build was a lot of fun for me. It kind of reminded me of a dartboard game I had when I was a child. There was Velcro, so the darts had these big flat noses on them and these goofy wings, and had Velcro on it, so you throw it the dartboard and it would stick. And it was a fun game for me. I played it a lot when I was a kid, so I really enjoyed this project. Now, I'm cutting everything out of 1/2-inch plywood, and I want to mention that I'm using a table saw, a chop box, and a jigsaw for this build, but if all you had was a jigsaw, you could definitely build this project. Most of the cuts here are going to be done with the jigsaw. Now, a jigsaw is one of those tools that I think is underrated in a shop. You know, with a good blade and a jigsaw, you can accomplish a lot. And the better you get with your jigsaw skills, the more stuff you can do. Now with this, I always recommend keeping it on a second or a number 2 setting. Most jigsaws will have 3 settings. The third setting is for powering through cuts that don't have to be really accurate. The second setting works really well with a good quality blading, and you get some really clean looking cuts. So after I laid out the design for one of the legs on the 1/2-inch plywood, I cut it out with the jigsaw and then cleaned it up. And these little slots are going to be little areas where the other leg will slide into. So I want to make sure that the other piece of 1/2-inch fits in there really well. So after sanding it down, making sure I had a nice tight fit for the plywood, I used that first leg that I cut out as a template for the second leg. And then it's just a rinse and repeat. You know, always take your time and watch what you're doing, and in the true sense of the word, aim small, miss small. You know, always be looking for that point. For me, I try to cut right onto one side of the line, not down the center of it. And that helps me get more accurate cuts. So in these nice tight little spots like that where it's hard to turn the blade sideways, you can actually use the front of the blade as a bit of a rasp of sorts to kind of clear away some material. So after I'd finished cutting out both the legs, I get a rough sanding on them and then made sure they fit. Now with the legs assembly done, I need to start working on the bench seat. And to do that, I just cut 2 pieces that were 14 inches by 14 inches square, stacked them on top of each other, and I'm cutting a corner off of each one with the chop box. Now there is a set of plans available on my website for anyone who's interested in building one for yourself, and there's a 1-to-1 template for the top or the seat. The little cutouts right here allow the legs to slide into the seat, and then you twist it and it locks the legs in place. So after gluing or taping the template together, I cut it out, and then I'm going to glue it down to the top or to the base of the top. And before I glue anything down or a template down to a piece of wood, I like to put the blue tape down because it's a lot easier to clean up afterwards. Now you're going to see here the template's a little bit smaller than the seat, and that's because I messed up. When I printed off the template, I did not make sure that it was in the 100% scale when I printed it off. And rather than going back and printing out another one, I used the template to center out the base on it and then just drew around the legs. So with the correct marks on my template, I drilled some holes out and then cut each of those little areas out with the jigsaw. Now when I was using this jigsaw, I was tearing the template a lot. It was getting hard to follow the lines. So I came back with a utility knife and just cut out the template where it needed to be and the blue tape, and that just gave me a really nice hard edge to follow with the blade of the jigsaw. And of course, the first thing to do is to see if it works. So you set it in place, you twist the seat, and that locks it in. Now the seat has a top and a bottom part, and they're separated by some 1-inch pieces of 1/2-inch plywood. Now I want to glue these on, and I'm going to tack them in place with a brad nailer just to make sure they stay. And I'm gluing on the 2 sides and the back part first. After I have those glued in place, I'll go back over to the chop saw and I'll use that to clean up the edges that are sticking out. That way I don't have to cut a bunch of miters on those 6 pieces that I already put on the piece, or on the seat. Now I'm going to fill in between the sides and the back there, and this time I do have to cut the miters, but at least now I have this hard area that I can measure and make sure I have a nice tight fit. So with those extra pieces cut, all that's left to do is install them. After getting the sides and back installed, I install the top and then clamp it and let it dry. And then of course there's all the sanding to do. Now I used some 180 grit on the edges and then some 220 and came back with some hand sandpaper to knock off all the sharp corners. Now for a finish on this project, I chose natural Danish oil. This is a really easy finish to use. You can brush it on thick or wipe it on thick, let it sit for a few minutes, and then wipe it off. It really is that simple. With the finish dry on the legs and the seat, I was able to finally slide the legs into the seat, which is where you'll carry these, and then add a strap to it. Now when I was putting the screws in, I wanted to be careful to stay towards the outside because the screws are a bit longer than 1 inch. And I just used an old belt that I had laying around. So when you want to use it, you slide the legs out, slide the legs together, pop them in the base there, twist it, and you have a stool. I know some of you are thinking, I wonder how strong this really is. Well, let's test it. I'm a pretty big guy. I still weigh almost 300 pounds, and it held me just fine. It was really easy to use, easy to put together, and having that strap on it made it nice to carry around. And this thing with 1/2-inch plywood is actually really light. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you like folding furniture projects, check out these videos. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe. Now if you'd like to see what's happening in the shop as it's happening in the shop, I post over on Instagram daily. I also hang out with a couple of cool cats on a podcast called Maybe I've Said Too Much. If you'd like to see that, links are all in the description box below, and we'll be talking to you soon.